Hello and welcome to Season 1 of VajraPod Conversations, where you can listen to a father and son's conversations about life and weathering the storms that face us in said lifetime. I'm one of your hosts, Namka, or just Nam, and my co-host happens to be a neuropsychiatrist, Dr. Chuang Norsang, who I will be affectionately calling Pala because that's how a Tibetan kid addresses their dad. In our first season of this podcast, we will be focusing on topics and issues related to navigating the workplace, which we hope will be helpful for not just our younger, early career listeners, but also for more experienced folks as well. A little something for everybody kind of thing. As a reminder, our podcast is not intended to be direct ethical or medical advice, and if needed, please seek professional help appropriately. And with that, let's dive into today's episode on managing relations at work. Before we begin the meat of our topic, I just wanted to spend a little bit of initial time to define what work means. And at least for me, work is sort of like a series of atomic tasks that we perform on a daily basis that eventually tie up to meet a certain overarching objective. I mean, whether that objective is like to gain profits for a large corporation or even just to increase sales for a small family-run business. That objective could be anything, but these atomic tasks that each one of us individually perform eventually have to sort of tie together in order to make that goal or objective successful. So I think that's where us humans, where our interpersonal relations come in, and that's a major factor when you're working with other people in any sort of work setting.
Yeah, I think managing relationships at work are really important. I think if we take a step back and look at the world's full of people with different personalities. No two people are the same. We have our own upbringing, backgrounds. We come from different socioeconomic statuses and different racial backgrounds. And we have our own experiences as we grow up.
Right.
So I don't think two people can be the same. We are like different pieces of a jigsaw puzzle trying to find our place in life. Even being born into a family, all our family members have different personality types. We have a different ways of functioning, but still we learn how to gradually work as a single unit family.
Mm-hmm.
And even growing up, going to school, studying with our peers, settling our differences, all that is a part of managing relationships. And now we come to this work stage where we are in a small or large group working together towards the company's or organization's goal. Maybe it's a hospital, you're taking care of patients. Maybe it's an office where where you're doing some manufacturing stuff. Doesn't matter. I mean,
Right.
Interpersonal relationships are really, really important. And it's very important to build good relationships from the very beginning.
So I guess, starting from the very beginning, let's go with a hypothetical scenario where someone's on their first day at a new job. They've just been introduced to a couple of their coworkers, but everything is still very, very new to that person. The objectives of the company are still very new to him as well, and also the people that he or she just met, we still don't really know much about where they're coming from, what their backgrounds are. So how would you say, what would be a good approach towards, starting to build and nurture a meaningful relationship with your coworkers?
Most of us have gone through the first day at work phase, and it is daunting and anxiety provoking.
For sure.
You've just entered a new environment and met new people, and you feel an overwhelming sense of how do I adjust to this? This happens to almost everyone. And you have to initially reassure yourself that you're not the only one. And secondly, there are a number of measures you can take to kind of ease yourself into the workplace, build relationships, and feel more comfortable. I intrinsically believe that we are all seekers, and seeking for an answer or a solution comes kind of instinctively to us. We all tend to search, analyze, and then either believe or reject.
Hmm.
But among other measures in building relationships, I think communication is something that is really, really important and primary. Apart from just exchanging factual information, we also convey and accept our emotions, our fears, and strengths. In a way, we kind of open ourselves up and show others who we are, because we want to be accepted into this new environment of the first day at work. So communication is extremely helpful, not only in building but in also sustaining any kind of interpersonal relationship. Remember that communication is a two-way street, and it has to happen from both sides. You also have to consider that it has two aspects: speaking and listening.
Right.
The part where you convey information and the part where you accept what the other person has to say. And out of the two aspects, listening and accepting what the other person has to say is probably more important.
Hmm. Right.
It is an inherent quality of a human being to feel good if you are being listened to. And by learning how to listen well, not only are you gaining information, but you also make the other person feel better. But it's a tough thing to do, to listen well, because it takes a lot of effort on your part. But then it gets easier as you go along. You can also try something like reflective listening to practice, like hearing what the other person has to say and then repeating back a summary, like, so what I heard you say is such and such.
Okay.
Believe me, it works. The other person feels heard and immediately feels better, and you do the same. Then the two of you start opening up more, and that's the start of becoming more comfortable in the environment.
Right. So what I hear you saying is, so I guess in a way it's true that people sort of wish to see, going off of the reflective listening topic that you just brought upon. People tend to look for themselves in other people, and this sort of familiarity, it kind of spurs that person to become a little bit more amicable towards that other individual who shows similar traits. So is it true that we're all sort of like trying to look for ourselves in other individuals, and are instantly more receptive when we find that?
I think that's true. I think that's very true. I think we go about our lives trying to seek ourselves in other people, and which is quite impossible, because no two people, like I said, are alike. We all come from different backgrounds and upbringings and, pasts. So no two people can be really alike. But what we can feel comfortable in a relationship is finding common ground, finding bits and pieces of yourself in others. When you walk into a group or an office or any place, I mean, there are some people that you instantly kind of get along with. You don't know what it is, but then you get along with that person right away.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas there are certain people you have a difficult time with. And I feel, having gone through these situations before, I think the most among the two, I think when you start feeling comfortable with certain people, I think you're finding common ground. I think you see bits and pieces of yourself in that other person, and that immediately attracts you to that. And then similarly, the other person may find themselves in you as well.
Right.
And that leads to a comfort zone where you two get along well with each other.
Yeah, I think definitely communication is a very, very important part of working in any sort of environment. And I think it's so important that I believe we'll be discussing this in greater, detail, throughout the rest of this whole series. Because
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
yeah, there's going to be many more opportunities to have very specific discussions on communication in relation to a specific context at work. So yeah, this will be a recurring theme, I think, in all of our future episodes as well. But I guess, yeah, apart from this major aspect of work that is communication, are there any other ways that we can improve, relations at work?
Well, there are other ways of improving relationships apart from the primary focus on the importance of good communication. And over the years, I've found several factors important as well. Treating others with humility and respect has always helped me in strengthening the bond with others. And this is with everyone. Even at my workplace, I constantly try to make it a point to kind of treat people fairly and humbly. And that's all across the work hierarchy. And while doing this, it's important to be genuine in your interactions. And then as you do so, you will see the respect coming back your way. And then respecting boundaries, trying to stay positive all the time, being helpful whenever you can, are some of the simple rules you can work on in being more comfortable at your workplace and in trying to build your relationships. And as you go about doing this, always try to remember that even your coworkers or your superiors are going through their issues in life, as do you, and that everyone has their good days and not so good ones.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely those are very, very valid points. I guess going off of that, sometimes we find that it almost becomes a slippery slope when we're not able to figure out where we draw the line in terms of these connections that we make. So to be more clear, it's more of how do we define the boundaries between our professional relationships and then our personal relationship with whoever individual it is at work you're in contact with. For a lot of people, it doesn't make sense to act the same way as you would with let's say your childhood friend. The way you act with your childhood friend would be completely different than with, say, a friend you met at work. So I guess how do you define that sort of boundary while at the same time not missing out on key friendships in the workplace?
Well, the concept of establishing boundaries, initially you started consciously and then it becomes a subconscious act. Why do we create boundaries? I think we do it because we anticipate future conflict and we want to stay in the comfort zone in all relationships. And we reach a point where we feel that may lead to conflict, and that's where you draw the line. I think the boundary line is easier for personal relationships, like your childhood friend. I think it's easier to extend the boundary and enjoy the comfort zone. But in a workplace, along with your coworker, I think the boundaries are stricter because you have two components of boundaries. You have a personal, which is a social boundary, and you have a professional boundary. So, keeping this in mind, I think uh, the comfort zone is less, and you draw the line at a much lower level.
Yeah, and I think it'll also very much depend on the sort of personality you are yourself, right? Because, for example, if you're more introverted, you wouldn't want certain aspects of your life to be out in the public so much. But at the same time, if you're a slightly more gregarious sort of individual, you might find more comfort and happiness in being able to share many aspects of your personal life. So yeah, I guess striking that balance is all dependent on a case to case basis.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think like we talked about that different kind of personalities, and as you work together in time, you get to realize what kind of people they are, their fears, their happinesses. And we have to have different boundaries for different people. So that's absolutely right. But 2020 changed the whole, work style
Hmm.
landscape, and now many people are into like virtual work. And I have very little experience because I've always worked in a brick and mortar hospital setting or in a clinic setting. And I think you have more experience in this, Nam. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience, working in a virtual environment?
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely provide some of my own insights that I've gained from the couple of years of work experience I have as a software engineer. So, my latest role, I joined it during the pandemic, and a large portion of that, I'd say about probably like 90-95% of the initial onboarding, training, and also like now the everyday work, including meetings, etc. It's pretty much been virtual. And I guess one major thing that arises out of working a remote job is this feeling of working in isolation, um, and not having sort of the same kind of interactions you would normally have in a physical work setting. And one of those key interactions is, in my opinion, the water cooler moment. So these water cooler moments are basically, informal windows of time during a workday when we get to talk more, comfortably and interact with our coworkers on a more personal level. And since we're all humans, we have this, inherent need for companionship. Some of us more than others. And so when these moments become few and far between, or completely non-existent, it becomes even more important to make sure to reach out and communicate with your coworkers. So this, our listeners are probably tired of hearing the communication aspect again and again at this point, but I think it just goes to show how important that point really is. For example, one thing you could do is, check in on people you haven't spoken to in a while and ask them, maybe a work-related question or just how their day is going, how their work is going, and it just gives you an opportunity to, strengthen the bond that might already be there, and also get to know what's happening outside your, little virtual cubicle, so to speak. Um, but other than that, there could also be other opportunities to interact with your peers, and these could be helpful resources that are already existing within the organization. You could look out for mentorship programs to speak with more experienced professionals in your department or other departments. Um, you could look out for employee support groups, Or you could even look for, employee-run clubs and communities where you can meet and interact with like-minded individuals, and that further helps in in acquiring that sense of belonging within your work setting. In short, the main idea is, I think, to just cast aside the cloak of invisibility that sometimes falls upon us, and find ways to, reach out and remain connected to not just your peers but your higher ups as well. So, which brings me to my next question, which is, how do you foster relationships with your immediate supervisors, bosses, team leads, etc.? How would you approach building a meaningful relationship with your superiors? What do you think, Pala?
Uh, well, I think it's going back to the same, your personal rules that you make. I think it's very important that you communicate genuinely and well, always remaining positive, and then always treating, them fairly and respectfully. I mean, growing up in Darjeeling, India, in an Asian family, we were always taught the importance of respect, which is a very powerful tool in our communication with superiors. The only thing to remember is that while being respectful, we should not be looking for any validation or approval, because this might take us down a slippery path. But yeah, I mean, treating everyone fairly and respectfully is a very important way of dealing with superiors as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point about managing sort of your own expectations as well. I think that's also going to be a very that's going to be a recurring theme through our podcast episodes as well. So to summarize our entire conversation today, we first started with a discussion on the importance of communication and how crucial it is to build any meaningful relationship with a coworker. And then we talked about some other ways in which we can improve our relationships at work, like
such as positivity, connecting to people genuinely, treating people fairly and respectfully, and respecting boundaries, among others.
And then we did also discuss a little bit about how these play out in a virtual work setting. And then finally discussed how one should conduct themselves and have a healthy, meaningful relationship with their immediate supervisors and or higher management.
So the mantra for today is speak less, listen more. Humility and sincerity go a long way.
So that's it for today's episode. I'm sure there were a lot of other questions that we were not able to address within the short span of this episode. So we encourage all our listeners to send their burning questions to us either on social media or email them directly to us at VajraPod@gmail.com, and we will work on creating a special Q&A episode towards the end of this season where we'll consolidate all your questions and hopefully answer most of them to the best of our abilities. And with that, here's the two of us reminding you to
stay safe,
stay hopeful, and above all, keep shining. If you end up liking our conversations, please consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com/VajraPod. Any support amount will go a long way in helping us to produce quality content and also work towards creating exclusive content for our donors in the near future. So show your support by buying 1, 2, 3, or 100 digital beverages for our podcast at buymeacoffee.com/VajraPod. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to us on social media at VajraPod, VajraPod, so that more people can join in on these conversations. Also, check out our website at vajrapod.buzzsprout.com for show notes and more. All these links will be included in the description. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.